For Victims and Villains, my name is Josh, and today we are taking a retrospective look at the 1989 body horror Society. Society tells the story of a young man who's kind of an outsider from the rest of his family, a black sheep, if you will, who uncovers his family's deadly and very uncomfortable secret. This was a first-time watch for me, and I watched it in preparation for The Dark Side of Society, a brand new documentary that you can stream video on demand. I'll have a review out for that tomorrow, but I really wanted to kind of look at this film. And originally, I just wanted to look at this film from the lens of preparation, but the more this film went on, the more I was like, no, I need to do a video talking about this movie. This movie feels very much like The Substance in how it brings out its themes. And this is a movie that is tackling classism, the division between the rich and the poor, and just kind of these societal double standards that seem to exist, and just things like that. Like, if you take the beauty in Hollywood, specifically for women, the way that Substance does, and you kind of bring that into a movie from 36 years ago, and you really tackle classism and the division that lies between the rich and the poor, you would have Society. And I think that is what is so brilliant about it. There's a point in the documentary that, again, I'll be talking about tomorrow, where they talk about how 80s horror for this time primarily had become really just a slasher wonderland, and it was just overflowing with sequels to a lot of those things, where you're talking about lots of Freddy, Jason, and Michael Myers, Pinhead, and so on and so forth. And so movies like Society really didn't exist, and honestly, I am one person that thinks that the 80s are kind of the golden age of horror. I think that is where some of the best franchises have started from, but also the best films and standalone films exist, and Society might be one of the top 5 best ones that I have come across yet. I think one of the things that really helps Society stand out from a lot of the other genre entries of that decade is the way in which it is bringing forth these really heavy themes and how they're handling them, but also at the same way, the way this film just does not hold anything back and just does not give a and any film that can do that, can bring that forward, really just has my respect. Plus, this movie is just really well written, it's really well acted. And I think the thing that this film does extraordinarily well is that the first 2/3 of this film, the first 2 acts, really have just their claws and just really sink further and further into the psychological aspect, where there is a point in here that, much like The Surfer did a few weeks ago when we talked about that, you're questioning reality. And you're questioning this along with our protagonist, Bill. And then it just kind of goes balls to the wall and just goes and becomes this really gross out body horror. I found the final act of this movie to be really, really uncomfortable to watch. I love body horror, but this movie found a way to kind of crawl under my skin and just lay eggs. And yeah. But again, it's horror that challenges those areas of comfortability that really have the defining mark of what makes not only great storytelling, but also at the same time just leaves a film worth watching. And this is a film that I would argue is worth studying, not just merely watching, but studying it. It just has these layered upon layers. And even after watching the documentary and hearing the filmmakers talk firsthand about the process of not only writing this movie, but creating it as well, there is just, again, there's just a rich amount of layers that we are seeing here and we are digging into as an audience, which makes this one of the most underappreciated films of the decade. And the way that this film takes that psychological horror and morphs it into body horror is just a thing of mastery. Like, it's just incredible, nothing short of exceptional. And the practical effects that we find here in the body horror by Screaming Mad George, this is not a movie for the faint of heart. And some of the imagery that made me so uncomfortable, but yet at the same time, when the credits started rolling, I was like, I want more. Like, I think there's so much to say about a movie that makes you feel that way, and yet at the same time, that you want more of that, that you want to literally indulge in that, just speaks to the quality of how this film was directed, how it was written, how it was acted, how it was shot, how the camera moves, especially during that third act. Just the fluidity of the camera is, again, this thing just feels like a masterclass of storytelling. And at the end of the day, I'm so mad that it took me so long to actually watch this film and engage in this film the way that it did. And with that said, I'm going to run this one through the Rorschach rating scale. I'm going to go ahead and give 1989's Society a 5 out of 5. This is a perfect movie. This is a movie that you understand why it influenced so many filmmakers upon its release, why it has the controversy it does, how it uses psychological and body horror to kind of melt together to really create a really unique experience that you don't really find too often. It's well directed, it's well acted, and again, just the way that this movie just transforms itself, taking its audience by surprise, but also the way that it literally comments on classism is one of the best examples that I have ever seen from this genre. If you guys have seen Society, what did you guys think? If you guys haven't and you stumbled upon this video online, maybe you've been curious about it, maybe you're curious about the documentary I'll be talking about tomorrow, click the links in the show notes below where you guys can stream it or rent it today. And now let's talk about mental health and what this film teaches us about mental health. If you guys are new to our content, Mental Health Moment is where we will take a theme of mental health out of the film which we're reviewing, talk about it for a few moments in the hopes to deconstruct the stigma surrounding mental health. I've talked about how society uses classism really kind of woven brilliantly throughout its narrative, but I think one thing this film embraces on the side of that is also kind of feeling like alone and going up against societal expectations or what we think are expected of us. I strongly believe that there's this mental health hindrance that comes along when the things that are expected of us don't bring us any joy and instead like really hurt us and create things like depression and addiction and alcoholism and isolation, and that list just kind of goes on because again, what society says we quote need to be doesn't necessarily have to be the ultimate destiny or the ultimate destination. At the end of the day, find things that are going to make you happy, whether that's a career change, whether that is getting out of a toxic relationship, whether that is cutting ties with family members or other people within your life, like finding things that are going to bring you joy and bring you peace. Because at the end of the day, whatever society says and whatever the expectations are, they're not going to be paying your bills. They are not going to be around with you. And here's the other thing to keep in mind is that at the end of the day, we are kind of left to our own devices and we live with ourselves day in and day out. We live with that depression or that unhappiness or whatever that hindrance is that is causing that mental health blockage or hindrance. Remove it and take your mental health seriously. What does society know in and of itself when we have such large stigmas that exist around topics like depression, like suicide, like self-mutilation? When we talk about it here freely, it is so that it is in the hopes that there is this separation from stigma, that we are embracing and normalizing conversations around mental health. And sometimes those normal things, they need to begin with a change of scenery for us and a change of expectations for ourselves. If you or someone you know is struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, click the links in the show notes below to check out our mental health resource library. Society is now available to stream, own, or rent on a multitude of streaming platforms. Again, the links are in the show notes below. Along with that, you guys will find more movie reviews like this, links to our social media, as well as how to support us on Patreon and Paramount Plus as well, and that follow button. So until next time, remember to keep it classy, keep it spooky. Have a great night.